And I am joined this episode by my friend Andrew Hardie, who is a financial planner. He's joining me for this Veranda Talk segment because, of course, we're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic and trying to get back to some level of normalcy. States are reopening, but some of them are closing again. And we are all in this state of limbo in terms of our finances, right? Your rainy day money is running down. If you're an entrepreneur, you're wondering, how am I going to kind of shuffle to make my business survive? If you are an employed person and don't have your own business, you might be wondering, what's the side hustle going to look like? Or how am I going to make my savings stretch beyond this time? And so for some of those answers, I've reached out to financial planner, financial professional, Mr. Andrew Hardie. Andrew, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. I'm doing good, Calibe. How are you doing?
Boy, I'm hanging in there. This situation of COVID is kind of throwing everybody off. And so we're all trying to navigate through it together. And mainstream media is talking about what they're talking about. But here in the Caribbean community, where we have a number of nurses and a number of people who are in the services industry, and a lot of the essential workers are coming from our community. It might be a different set of questions or a different set of nuances. So I'd love if you'd be able to kind of help me guide our viewers through some of these questions here. So first of all, as a financial professional, what does that mean your expertise is?
Well, my expertise is in finances, essentially. People, I mean, it's a broad category, it's a broad sector, if you will. And the thing about it is that quite a lot of things affect our finances, and we don't really recognize them sometimes. And so what I do is I take a look at, in broad terms, everything that has something to do with your finances, every step of the way. I mean, think of it from in terms of finances. If finances were school and you started off from kindergarten or prep school, like we used to call it, and you go all the way through to college and you leave, you finally graduate, and that's when you're 65, 70, or whatever it is. So your entire financial life is what we focus on. And how do you make the best of it? How do you take advantage of what needs to be taken advantage of? How do you avoid pitfalls and that sort of thing?
Okay. All right. So a holistic look at the finances that we typically don't learn about in school. I remember a class called economics, and at Immaculate, where I went to in Jamaica, they taught us sewing, and that was supposed to be econ class, right? So, or home economics or something like that. But anyway, and then so we're in the middle of the pandemic now. In America, they say somewhere between 20 and 40 million, the numbers keep fluctuating, are currently unemployed. And some of those obviously are going to be our Caribbean people. So how are you seeing the demographic of working Caribbean people now reflected in this unemployment? Are many of your clients those, essential workers or people who are not self-employed or what have you? How are they looking and managing in the moment?
Mm-hmm. It is difficult. I mean, this thing has impacted all areas of the society. I mean, this pandemic really doesn't care about where you are in your socioeconomic status. It really has impacted everybody. What you have found, one of the typical jokes that people used to have is, you're a Jamaican, you have more than one jobs. And so that actually has helped in situations like this. Some people may call it a side hustle, so on and so forth. But us from the Caribbean, we've always tried to strive and to step ahead of the curve. But we are affected. Make no doubt about it. We have been affected significantly by this thing.
Right. And then so the working community, again, versus the entrepreneur community, has a different set of challenges. What does that difference look like?
Entrepreneurs, they, like yourself, like myself, we are trying to, again, pivot to try to stay ahead of this situation. You've had to do innovative things. For people who own like restaurants and stuff like that, they've had to pivot. So maybe they're not employing the kitchen, the floor staff anymore, but they're employing the kitchen staff. Maybe
or delivery people.
And the delivery, exactly. So they can use some of the floor staff to do the delivery or to do the takeout from the kitchen to the front to do the cashier. So you've got to pivot a little bit. actually quite significantly in these days to try to find a way around this thing. And what we always say in my industry is at this particular juncture in our economy, this is where entrepreneurs are made.
Mhm.
And entrepreneurs who are entrepreneurs already, you have the opportunity now to build your wealth, because everybody's affected. If you can find a way around something right now, then this is where you're going to excel.
So what are those industries right now that are doing well? If I wanted to now be starting a business, I've been at home for the last 2 months and I can't wait anymore to get another job, right? What should I be dipping my toe into?
People are doing things like making masks, that sort of thing. Now, we have to be careful about which industry we set our foot into, we dip our toe into, because for instance, if you said, you know what, I'm going to start going out there and making a whole bunch of masks for everybody, which is quite lucrative now. But what happens a year from now? What happens 2 years from now? So you have to start looking at things that are going to be there. Certain industries are going to go away, and certain things are going to replace them, or be something in addition, or be something totally different. But that is what you need to go into.
But is that bad? I mean, even if it is a short-term thing that I can do right now to make a bunch of money right now, is that a bad thing?
No, it's not. It's not. The point is to not just survive, but to thrive.
Right.
And the point is to do what you need to do now until later. Or you may decide that you want to do something twofold, a layered approach. Do something now, whatever it is, to provide yourself some income. And in the meantime, behind the scenes, get something that will be longer lasting.
Right. Well, get something that will be longer lasting. That's part of the challenge right now to begin with.
That is
How should we be approaching our finances for, I don't want to say the next pandemic, but for the next rainy day that's going to come up? What should we be doing? What should we be doing now?
Right now.
And what should we be doing as our finances start to build up again? And hopefully, whenever we do get out of this to replenish everything.
In terms of organizing your finances, we've always taught that there are three main types of accounts that you should have. You should have your regular checking account, savings account, that sort of thing, where you can access it very quickly. In the course of a day, you can, or next day, you can always get whatever you need to get for whatever purpose it is. Then the second type of account that you should have is your emergency account. Now, that is a key account. Well, actually, all three of them are key. But in this particular situation here with the pandemic, we've always taught our clients to make sure that they have between 3 to 6 months worth of money for bills. Now, what would that look like if you had 6 months? Imagine if you had 6 months worth of money to cover your bills. Would you be concerned that you're out of work for a month or two? Not really.
Right.
Would you be concerned if the pandemic seemed to be dragging on a little bit longer, or the wave is coming back or whatever for another 2 months? Not really. You'd be cautiously looking at the situation, but not panicking, and not certainly not out of money.
Right.
And then the third and final account is your retirement. What kind of money? The way I choose to look at it is, what money you're getting now that you're throwing towards the future. You're throwing it out in the future, so that when you get to the future, the money will be there. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that through education, I am slowly walking through with our clients to make sure that they understand these things, these concepts, and we start doing some things about it. And it's not, people think, oh my goodness, I'm not even making that much money. How can I save for my retirement? Or how can I? It doesn't take a whole lot. It just takes the first step.
Plus, and then, I think we often prioritize shoes and flat screen TVs and stuff like that over. Let's be real about it, right? The iWatch and the iPod, whatever the things are. I'm not a techie, but all the eye stuff is more important than thinking about. Or a pandemic will never come, and here it is upon us.
And here it is upon us. And then here in South Florida, we get those mini pandemics every year. It's called a hurricane season.
There you go.
When you have to, maybe the electricity go off for a month, or maybe your place of business closes for a month, after the hurricane passes. this is something that shouldn't be strange to us. Us here in South Florida or us from the Caribbean, because we know that's the sort of thing. The same situation affects us in the Caribbean. But what we caution people is to make sure that, hey, you do have those separate accounts set up, and you can have additional things, but those are the core things.
Yeah, and that makes sense, and that leads me to another question, right? So I know from being around the Caribbean community in South Florida for maybe the last 16 years, I think I've lived here now, that I will see every now and again there's some property in Texas that everybody needs to go and buy, or there's some kind of investment, some all-in or some, fly-by-night. Sorry to call it fly-by-night, but that particular one was kind of fly-by-night, right? These things that pop up every now and again, and my friend did it, and my friend is doing it, and the bottom hasn't dropped out yet, so let me go and do that. Whereas we live in a country where it's not a secret that the people who are the wealthiest are the ones who, the term "play the stock market" makes it so sketchy. Makes it sound so sketchy, right?
Right.
But they are the investors and the people who strategically work with a financial professional and put their money into stocks and instruments and guided pathways towards success. But we as a community don't tend to do that. We want to see what the piece of land that our cousin buy, and we're going to buy the same piece of land. What is that culture about, and why should we be looking, or how is it better for us to start to think in a different way? Talk about how we should be thinking.
Very, very, very good point. I mean, what we'll find more often than not is that we want to take advice, financial advice, from our friend or cousin or whatever. Right. And when you take a step back and say, how has that person done financially? That's what we should actually be looking at. Look at in every case, not just financial, but in every case, where is your information coming from? Qualify the source first. Our company has actually done some studies, and one of the things that we've found is that the people who are out of the entire population, people who actually have some sort of financial professional working for them or with them, the diversity is stark. Of the people who have access to a financial advisor or a financial professional, their net worth in comparison to people who don't is vastly different. It's vastly different, and so that those pieces of data are very telling. So if you want your net worth to be high, then there are two things you need to do. Get advice and take advice from a financial expert, because sometimes we get it and it's like, boy, I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right. I thank you very much, Mr. Andrew Hardie, for spending some time with me today and for shedding some light on what our finances should be looking like in this age of Corona and hereafter.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. All righty. Take care.
I am here to guide anyone and everyone.